They once forged one of the shortest college football rivalries of all time, but it was also so intense and so epic in its proportions to the national championship race and to the visceral attitude of college football from either end of the spectrum. It was Miami and it was Notre Dame, and they may join as rivals in the same conference here. They both shared in a major step that was taken, of course, and announced today as both Notre Dame and the University of Miami gaining AAU status. We discussed the football aspects. We will touch on the football aspects as well during this live stream, but also the academic landscape, the culture, the athletics in regards to budget and otherwise, both for Miami and Notre Dame. Welcome to our deep dive series with Tony Altamar, our good friend, joins us, consultant and strategist who lines us up and sets us straight on all things pertaining to college football off the field that impacts, of course, on the field. Tony, how you doing tonight?
I'm great. What an exciting day for all six schools. This is, the AAU does not add schools very often. The last time they did, I think they added 2 in 2019, and it was like 2011. I forget exactly before that, but they usually do it like in, 2s or, 1 at a time. So to add 6 schools today is just really exciting for Miami, for Notre Dame, Arizona State, UC Riverside, South Florida, and George Washington.
As you know, Tony, so many people out there that love college football who would otherwise not care about AAU status certainly have been more informed about AAU status since, of course, that's a major linchpin or talking point and bullet point for the Big Ten in regards to membership. And now that Notre Dame and Miami have that status, it's easy to jump to conclusions and say, hey, are they joining the Big Ten? But we will get into all of that.
Well, and first of all, it sounds really silly to say, but as dorky as this sounds, the fact that the football makes the public so interested in this thing that is so important to these universities is actually kind of cool. Is the way I look at it, because most people would have no idea what your Carnegie R1, R2, R3 status, your AAU status, fans wouldn't know about this if it wasn't for realignment, but it's so important to the universities that I think is kind of cool. So it's like a little side benefit for us here.
There are certain things in our culture that we have made important, and certainly football is one of those. There are other things that are intrinsically important to the fabric of our society, and certainly our higher learning is one of those components. So, yes, so fascinating that we can now look at Miami and Notre Dame on a different, from a different perspective as it pertains to possible membership in the Big Ten. So, Tony, where did you want to start our deep dive?
All right. Well, first of all, let's just take a look. So, Mark, we talked about this with Florida State. The New America Foundation several years ago published a list of what they thought were, it was actually more complicated, but like how they should refigure the AAU. But they ranked schools sort of in what they thought they should be. And it stood out to me. And so we covered this. These were the top 15 ranked schools that they thought should be in the AAU. And as we look at some data, as excited I am for these 6 schools, and these 6 schools today deserved 100% to get into the AAU. There are some other schools who very fairly maybe think that they also deserve to be on that list, or maybe they deserve to be on that list a little sooner. So, on that list, Arizona State was their number 1. And we've talked about that, Mark, on the show before, about kind of Arizona State had very much perception issue, admissions issue. They've got the big online presence. The AAU sort of frowned on that. The AAU just brought them in today. Now, the next 3 that were on this list are a little wild because Florida State, North Carolina State, and Georgia very much think that they belong. UC Riverside was down a little, and Virginia Tech as well. UC Riverside was down a little ways, but the thing about UC Riverside is because it's part of the University of California, like the University of California is very integrated in a lot of ways. So it's actually kind of weird that UC Riverside wasn't already there. So UC Riverside makes a lot of sense. And of course, South Florida, and then George Washington, not on their list for a variety of reasons. George Washington, awesome school. I'm super excited for that. I was actually a fraternity advisor working with kids at GW for a long time. I love those kids. They're just awesome. So I'm really excited for them. Just hold on, move on real quick. Where's my screen not doing it? There we go. So this is the AAU as of today. Now what's interesting is of the combined Big Ten and Pac-12, there are now only 3 schools that are not in the AAU, who are Nebraska, who got kicked out, and then the 2 ag schools in Oregon State and Washington State. So it's if you guys can see, and as we think about like sort of how this happened, the voting blocks are a little evident here, which I think is kind of interesting. Truxell Gumby's asking which George Washington. Gumby, it's GW in DC. Washington University in St. Louis has been a member of the AAU, I don't know, going back a century or so. So anyway, it's every member of the Ivy League, every member of the UAA, which is sort of like a Division III, kind of like the Ivy League. We now have 7 ACC, 5 SEC, 1 Big 12, and then almost the whole Big 10 and Pac-12. So that's who's in. Of note, I think it's interesting to take a look at the board, like who really sort of pushed this. Kind of interesting. You have 2 University of California seats on the board, and USC, along with Illinois. And the the chancellor from Illinois is the chairman of the Big Ten. So this is, the AAU is the ultimate inside organization, inside job. These are like the most inside folks you could get. 2 Ivy League, Cornell and Harvard, NYU from the UAA, Kansas and Pitt and Duke. And that's the whole board. So these are certainly the folks that push those decisions. So this chart, Mark, we talked about changed. So as we think about Big Ten expansion, this is just kind of a cheesy way to think about it. Usually, I mean, almost everybody in the Big Ten, I mean, you sort of think about it, there's 3 real categories. First would be state flagship schools. Your main state flagship school with the med school and the law school and everything like that. The second, which has always been a Big Ten staple, is AAU members. And then the third are super elite academic schools. So there were only 2 schools in the top 35 that were not already AAU, and they were Notre Dame and Boston College, or excuse me, Notre Dame and Wake, not BC. And now Notre Dame is in. So this is just updated as of today. You can see Notre Dame and Miami are there. They're highly ranked and AAU schools. I mean, you can't be more Big Ten than that without being a state flagship school. And so for private schools, they're in the same bucket as Stanford and Duke and Rice and Tulane and Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's public, but so all right, so we're gonna dig in tonight, guys, on 4 categories. We're gonna look at Miami and Notre Dame as universities. We're gonna look at their academics. We're gonna look at their athletic departments and then their football teams. And by the way, if you had told me that Catholics versus convicts might be the new official AAU t-shirt, I would not have bet that. But we're in a new world as of today, guys. So this is kind of an interesting chart. We could get into a little more. This is looking at athletics and sports, like in combination. And I'll show you how this goes. We'll dig into that in just a minute. We have a better version of that. Sorry, the Voice of College Football universe we're looking at here, and what we're going to compare Notre Dame and Miami to are the Blue Bloods. So these are all the channels that we have here in the Voice of College Football community that Mark runs. And so when we do a lot of these comparisons, these are comparing the best of the best. So all of these are great schools, exceptional schools. You guys are going to see a lot of data that we look at tonight. Every single school in a Power 5 conference is an outstanding university. Actually, pretty much every school in FBS is. But every school in a Power 5 conference is an outstanding university. So when you see things that are maybe a little low or a little red, that doesn't mean it's a bad school. It just means that it's just different relative to the others. A lot of times they have a different mission. So I just want to get that out of the way first to make sure everybody knows. Like, red does not mean bad. It just means not as green. Think of it that way. So this is a chart that we've used a little bit to take a look at, and this is looking at schools comparing their sports success and their academic rank. So sports success goes up and academic rank goes over. So you want to be as far in the upper right as you can. Sorry, the camera's reversed here. You want to be as far in the upper right as you can. Let's look at where Notre Dame and Miami are in just a sec. But as we notice this, we see there's a couple big, very clear groups. The Power 5 schools are almost all great at sports and great at academics. The G5 schools there's some that have weaker academics, some that are mid. None of the G5 schools are really great at sports. The elite Ivies and the service academies are kind of a mix at sports. Some are really good, some are not, but they're just in light years academically. You see that little triangle. And then you see the wacky thing, remember, and this is important for context, there are no bad schools or even weak schools, just even mid schools that are good at sports. So all the Power 5 schools you can see there are in good shape. So where are Notre Dame and Miami? Well, here's where they are. They're both outstanding universities, elite private schools, and outstanding in sports. I'll tell you, for Notre Dame fans, especially in Miami fans, this is a really big celebration day because these two schools fought hard to build themselves to where they are. And today, truly, I mean, it sounds cheesy to say, but the Ivy League schools voted, yes, you are in our club. And that's just, and I don't want to sound cheesy, but this is a massive, massive day for Notre Dame and Miami. You guys are now officially with the best of the best, but you've earned it. And you're going to see that in these statistics, which I think comes up. So, here they are, we kind of labeled. You guys have seen this chart before. A lot of you who are here with the community, but you see Notre Dame is up there. Notre Dame is kind of right there between, Virginia and Ohio State, Florida. I mean, just really, really in elite status. Miami's down there a little bit, actually kind of between Rutgers and Maryland and Indiana, Minnesota, and Texas A&M. So both fantastic schools. Somebody's asking how many AAU schools? 71 as of today. There were 65 yesterday. Now, when we talk about the Big Ten, the ACC and the Big Ten very much fit together. This is that same chart, just kind of blown up to just the Power Fives. You see the ACC schools labeled here. And you can see Miami and Notre Dame. I mean, they are in the midst of the Big Ten, and so they really, and we'll look at more data, but they would really fit really, really well into being in the Big Ten, which is why you hear so much interest in them from the Big Ten, because they fit the Big Ten in sports and they fit the Big Ten academically. Chris was asking military academies. No, the AAU's big thing is research, and the military academies do not do any research and don't even have grad programs. So let's look at conference here, because this chart changed today. If we take a look, this kind of shows here Notre Dame. And by the way, we're counting Notre Dame as a member of the ACC in all these data, because they are, even though they play football independently, they are a member of the ACC, and they play half their football games against the ACC. So they very much fit in the ACC academically. The ACC is number 2 academically ranked behind the Big Ten. Endowments are very high, just between Pac-12 and SEC. Research also, again, between Pac-12 and SEC. And then if you take a look at here, this is the pride and joy AAU members. So the Big Ten, again, every single school except Nebraska is an AAU member. Nebraska used to be. The Pac-10 has 8 of the 10, plus another, 5 or 6 University of California schools in addition. The ACC is now up to almost half and half, which is big. SEC is about a third. The Big 12 only has 1. And the AAC is now boosting up to over a fifth of the ACC is in the AAU, which is awesome, guys. Like, this is South Florida getting in is really, really cool for the American. So yeah, the American is now the 5th academic power conference, I guess you could say. They'll come after me for that on various Twitter sites, I'm sure. So why does this matter? Well, guys, this is all federal research. All whatever 90 billion or whatever of it that is done, all federal academic research. Of that, 111 schools do 73%. And this is the AAU's bread and butter, is this research money. And of that, the Big Ten accounts for 21% of all federal research in this country. So over $15 billion, almost $16 billion, which is just insane.
Yes.
I mean, the ACC is $8 billion. I mean, the Ivy League's only, they got fewer schools, but they're $6 billion. So really, these 9 conferences account for 73% of federal research, which is massive numbers that just dwarf the sports stuff that we're talking about. And this is why these universities want to be affiliated with each other. They want to be networked into each other. They want to be branded together. They want to know that their name is talked about with those other schools. Now, for Notre Dame and Miami, I mean, the ACC and the Big Ten are both phenomenal associations of phenomenal universities. So it's not as much a step, whether to step up, step down, because they're both great. One of the things, Stanford Graduate School of Education did a study after the last realignment round, and they did it in the mid-2000s, to see, is there a link between conference and academics? And they found that actually, yes, that schools that realigned, and they all realigned to, because there's actually never been a school that's academically downgraded in a major conference. But of the schools that, so they've all gone up. Sort of like, again, moving up in the world. No school to date has ever downgraded. And that angers one conference, but that's the truth. So when Stanford did their research, they found that the average school that realigns, their peer assessment score improves 3% a year towards the mean of the conference. So Rutgers, Maryland, Nebraska, Penn State, benefiting from the Big Ten. Florida State has benefited enormously from the ACC. Because again, what's happening is your school now stands shoulder to shoulder and is perceived as standing shoulder to shoulder with these giants of education and academia. And so that's why there's such an important link in the minds of the schools with the conference, because it's about saying who you are. And it sounds where you say, 3%, but that's like, those numbers are so hard for schools to move. Like, schools try to move heaven and earth to move those ratings. And it's astounding actually that they do that. All right. Should we dig in? Let's look at the university side.
I got 2 questions for you, Tony.
Yeah.
And of course, Miami and Notre Dame are the focus, but I was curious about Nebraska, since they were AAU status at one time and are not now. And this may be just speculation on your part, but from certainly a place of knowledge.
There was some drama there. I don't have the full details of the drama.
So you would anticipate that the Big Ten is putting some level of pressure on Nebraska to move in the right direction?
I think Nebraska burned that bridge. So, for example, Nebraska was asked to resign. That's what the AAU does, right? They don't actually vote you out. They sit you down and they're like, so you don't really meet the standards anymore. You need to go. And Union College forever ago, Catholic University of America, Syracuse, Iowa State, these schools, when they got kicked out, like Iowa State didn't leave the AAU. They got kicked out, right? I mean, it's the same thing as like, oh, Brady Hoke resigned as coach of Michigan. He didn't walk away, right? Like, they were like, you're not coming back here. So it's the same thing with the AAU. Nebraska said, no, we think we should stay. If you want to kick us out, you got to kick us out. We're going to stand there in the room while you vote us out. And they went. And this again, and Michigan like dominated the AAU itself at the time. So there's drama. I don't know the exact drama that went down, like with personalities involved. But Nebraska was like, no, we're going to stand there and you're going to vote us out. And the AAU was like, okay, all in favor? Bye, Nebraska. So having gone through that drama, I don't think there is a world where Nebraska comes back.
Okay.
But stranger things have happened. USC and UCLA joined the Big Ten. So, I mean, if they can join the Big Ten, maybe Nebraska can go back to the AAU.
Who would have thought 10 years ago that the Big Ten would stretch from coast to coast?
Exactly. And maybe now eyeing South Beach.
Yes.
Notre Dame would not have surprised me had you told me that at any point in the past 60 years.
Yes, they were the one team when I was a 12-year-old watching them play Purdue and Michigan State every year that I was like, why aren't they in the Big Ten? Now, this is several graphics ago. You don't need to go back, but if I'm looking at the graph correctly concerning that one that's very general, whether it has the blocks of academic versus athletic success, this surprises me, if I'm reading this correctly, that the worst, and again, this is relatively speaking, of the Ivy League would be surpassed academically by roughly, 25 to 30% of Power 5 schools?
Oh, I mean, look at Stanford. We'll look at, and we can look at some rankings. I'll show you. But Stanford is ranked like number 3 or something in the whole in the country. Northwestern is number 9. Johns Hopkins, I think, is number 8 or 9. Vanderbilt's number 15. And so, they're right up there with Cornell and Brown and everybody else.
Yeah.
Stanford and Harvard are equal.
Yeah. I'm not surprised by those examples, but that it adds up to what looks to be.
Well, so this is the Ivy League, the UAA, and the other AAU members that are not in those conferences. So there's a couple, like Brandeis skips down a little further.
Okay.
Carnegie Mellon, they're like up there in the 30s with the Michigans and the Boston colleges and those guys.
Okay.
In fact, we can probably, I think, is there one? Let me see if there's one that's, there's one that's labeled. Yeah. So down in the end, you've got, and these include the AAUs. There's UC Irvine, Rochester, Case Western, Dartmouth, Davis, Brown, Carnegie Mellon, Emory. Tufts is way high. And by the way, some of these that are not Division I, we gave them their athletic credit because sports are a really big deal to them. They're just not Division I. Like Tufts. Tufts wins national championships and all kinds of stuff. Sports are huge at Tufts. It's just, and if Tufts, by the way, wanted to be Division I and they wanted to win, they would absolutely come in and just start beating a snot out of some of these schools. So that's one thing, by the way. When I was in grad school, I was on the cycling team at Penn. The MIT kids were literally using wind tunnels with their cycling team. So some of these schools, you're oh, it's D3. They don't mess around. Some of these D3 kids can compete with anybody else.
Yeah.
Maybe not in football, but in other sports. Don't count out the D3. So let's look at Notre Dame and Miami here. So this is actually kind of interesting here. This is academic rank. These are and this is from, yesterday. So it hasn't moved them over into the AAU members category. But if you can kind of see Miami there so this is an average that we use here in the Voice of College Football channel. It averages 3 ranks between the U.S. News, the Shanghai, and the Wall Street Journal Times Higher Education rank. And then looks at them just with AAU members and FBS schools. So we've got a single universe. Because the problem is you look at some of these ranks and somebody's number 200 and somebody's number 400, but they're including 200 other schools in the middle, so it doesn't really count. So what this does, it standardizes to force rank everybody and averages them just within those worlds of AAU and FBS. So Miami here on this is number 49, and Notre Dame was number 40. So both of these schools we looked at before, because we've used this chart before, they were the 2 best ranked on average, not in the AAU. So, that sort of says, okay, that makes some sense as to why they made that choice of the ACC members. As far as research goes, Miami was pretty good they do 376. Notre Dame does 240. I mean, 240, that's $250 million, right? That's a lot of money. But why are they really mad right now at NC State and Virginia Tech? Because NC State's doing 547. Virginia Tech's doing 540. So they're doing 550 million, and they just got beaten out by 375 and 240. So you can kind of see why Virginia Tech people are pretty miffed.
Do you have any thoughts about why the vote went the way it did? Relationship?
I think a really large part of, I mean, again, all these are outstanding institutions who are well qualified. We are not taking anything away from anybody who on their qualifications, because these are all outstanding qualified schools. There's a lot of people who might wonder the interests of Notre Dame and Miami in getting into the AAU from the Big Ten standpoint. There's also, so we said, Mark, on the Pac-12 chat show in February, and we joked about it. In fact, I made a little tinfoil hat and I put it on my head. I literally put a tinfoil hat on my head, and I said, if I was ASU, my price of the Pac-12 staying intact would be AAU membership. And I joked, I said, you wouldn't know that it happened because it would happen like a year later. Guess I was wrong on that. And 2 weeks ago, Arizona stopped talking about the Big 12. Arizona State, by the way, have the same board of regents. They're run together as part of the system. And they stopped talking about the Big 12, and today Arizona State just got in the AAU. And today Arizona State just announced they're launching a med school. These are not things that you do if you have any interest in moving your branding to Ames and Lubbock and other places. This is, the realignment elements of what happened today with Arizona State are enormous, and what happened with Notre Dame and Miami. And, again, the nexus, remember, the AAU chairman is USC. The AAU vice chairman is Illinois, who is the Big Ten chairman. So, this is not like, we're not in tinfoil hat. We're like, those are the people. And, again, kind of interesting that, that we saw that happen. So again, we talked about it in February and said, I joked, I said that would be my price, and he got it. Again, enormously qualified. Arizona State ranked 8 years ago or whatever by the New America Foundation as the #1 school in the country in deserving AAU status. But a lot of people never thought they would have gotten it. And they did. So go Sun Devils. All right, sorry, let me switch on to that. So this is our comparison chart here in our Voice of College Football world. However, the change is, and I didn't have time to update the chart actually from today, but we have 2 new yeses checked there in the AAU world. So Notre Dame and Miami are both private schools, and they are 2 of only 3 private schools in this whole Voice of College Football universe. The only other private school is USC. They are now also AAU members, which is exciting. And one of the other things, the Carnegie classification, it's done by the Carnegie Foundation, which is R1 for the highest, R2 for the middle, and R3 not very strong for research universities. There's also other categories like bachelor schools, master schools, stuff like that. They don't really do research. But R1 is the best. And what I think says a lot about the major schools. So we talk about, like, there is an intertwining of athletics and academics that is huge in this country. Really used to make Chicago mad in the 1930s and 40s, but it just is. And every single one of our Voice College Football community shows here channels that we have is an R1 school, which is pretty cool. So again, Notre Dame and Miami. Miami is of this Voice College Football world is the 3rd biggest city community with a school, behind LA and Michigan. Miami has a much bigger core budget than Notre Dame. So Miami is a $2 billion core budget. That's one of the bigger ones. Notre Dame's a little smaller. And again, the reason they're smaller is because Notre Dame doesn't do as much big, expensive graduate stuff. Because Notre Dame is a more undergrad focused school. It's not bad. Notre Dame's a phenomenal school. We're going to look at their rankings in just a sec. But that's why they have that. So Miami has a total enrollment of 19,000 students. Notre Dame is 13,000. So those are two of the small. Is it the smallest? Yeah, Notre Dame is the smallest school in the Voice College football community, and Miami is, it looks like, second. So pretty small schools. Notre Dame is almost 70% undergrad, which is wild. Miami 63. Notre Dame has a 15% admissions rate, which is the second best in the Voice of College football world. Second only to USC. Fight on. And Miami a 28% admissions rate. So these are phenomenal schools. One thing about Notre Dame is kids who apply to Notre Dame go there. So 58%, which is the highest of any of these schools, 58% of Notre Dame's admitted students go there, which is phenomenal. And they are both expensive as crap. Notre Dame is $78,000 and Miami is $75,000. However, most students get financial aid and discounts, so students only pay $30,000 to $34,000 for both. So that is Miami and Notre Dame as schools. Should we look at their academics?
Absolutely.
All right, so this is where we see these are two great schools. So this changed. The top line changed because they're in AAU now, so you can ignore the top line. So again, our average academic rank here, Notre Dame 41, Miami 52. Now US News, which is the most common one, Notre Dame is 18 and Miami is 55. So again, great. Shanghai, they don't do as much research, so they both get dinged, 96 and 74. Wall Street Journal, 28 and 49, so both really good. Forbes, really good. Faculty, again, not doing as much graduate research and stuff, so a little bit lower, 92 and 71. Their research is a little bit lower, 56 and 81. Here's their research numbers. You can see Notre Dame is one of the smaller of these. Again, these are the mega schools doing mega research. Notre Dame is one of the smaller ones at 240. Alabama and Oregon are smaller. Alabama don't count that, though, because Alabama hides their research at UAB. Endowments, though, is where crazy. Notre Dame has an $18 billion endowment, which is the biggest in the Voice of College football world. Miami's is only 1.4. John Ruiz writes some checks. Fundraising, Notre Dame rate, and this is, fundraising is a snapshot in time, so it's the last MUP report. Notre Dame raised $445 million in donations. So, again, Notre Dame and its alumni are intertwined. Those alumni are funding it. Notre Dame's sitting on an $18 billion endowment to run its operations. It's fundraising like crazy. This is why when people look at Notre Dame, they should totally join the Big Ten because it's, $20 million more, $10 million more. Notre Dame has alumni that are like, okay, well, I got $30 million that says that's not a good idea. And that's why Notre Dame can afford to do what it wants. Notre Dame has an Ivy League level endowment, just enormous at $18 billion. Rhodes Scholars, Notre Dame's had 19. One thing kind of interesting here. So social mobility. So the idea of do kids come into your school and leave to change their life status? Or are you just graduating rich kids who grow up to be more rich kids? Notre Dame is ranked 19th in social mobility, which is the best in the Voice College football world. Miami, which is known for bringing in rich kids and sending them out as rich kids, is ranked 401. I mean, that doesn't really have a realignment impact, but just sort of a note.
How was that measured?
It's how incomes of students coming in and out.
Still there, Tony? Hello, Tony.
Hello,
Tony.
Sorry.
There you are.
I think I got the West Virginia internet going. Sorry, Joey. Got Joey's internet. So it's stuff like a lot of expected financial metrics and socioeconomic metrics versus what comes out, what you do to help kids, financial aid. There's a whole bunch of factors that go into that.
Okay.
But you look at graduation rate. Notre Dame has the best graduation rate of any school in our Voice of College football world, 96%. That's awesome. The best graduation rate of any of these schools. Better than Michigan, better than USC. better than Florida. Miami's also very good at 83.5, but Notre Dame is 96%. So Notre Dame brings kids in, they educate them, and they get them out. So I hate their football team. I hope they lose, but I laugh when they lose to Stanford and Marshall. But Notre Dame's a pretty great school. So is Miami.
Absolutely.
I am not a Miami hater, Terry. Hey, we used to spend spring break, and my dad would scheme offenses with the Miami coaches. So I have like pictures of like 10-year-old me with Dennis Erickson, stuff like that. So go Miami.
That is phenomenal. Yes.
So should we take a look at ranks now?
Yes, go to it.
So you're talking about like sort of fitting in. Here is where that average academic rank. Here's how they scale compared to everybody else. Again, you can see Notre Dame, and we look at the Big Ten. Notre Dame, Miami both fit in the Big Ten. Miami a little more towards the end. Notre Dame a little towards the middle. If you use just the U.S. News, Notre Dame is way up, probably second only to Northwestern or third only to Northwestern and Johns Hopkins, but all really, really good. They are both far above any school in the Big 12. The only ones above them in the ACC are North Carolina and Duke. They also be great in the SEC. Again, these are great schools academically. You can't go wrong. Hold on, we got to give a shout out to this super chat from Falconer TRX. It's great to hate Notre Dame football. It's okay. That's fair. Fight on. Sorry, I had to give that a little love. I saw that there.
Yes, Falconer TRX is a gold mine when it comes to some good
hating of Notre Dame.
Yes,
I tease it. I love it because I have so many friends who went to Notre Dame. I almost went to Notre Dame. It's actually the school that I thought I was going to go to until I got won over by USC. So this is admissions rate. You can see again Miami and Notre Dame both outstanding admissions rate, both better than almost anybody in the Big Ten. What are they? I think they're they would be like fourth and sixth in the Big Ten if they were to join the Big Ten. So both, again, super, super elite, outstanding schools. Faculty. So again, this is where we start to wonder a little bit about the AAU decision, because again, you got North Carolina State, you got Virginia Tech, beating these schools in a lot of these faculty and research numbers. So it's kind of okay, again, all qualified, but they got it and other folks didn't. This is looking at research by conference, and sort of scaled here again. We've already talked about the numbers, but Notre Dame is smaller. Notre Dame actually isn't even on this chart, so I should notice that. They're not even on the chart because they're smaller. And then Miami is there, again, well behind North Carolina State and Virginia Tech. And behind Georgia. So some fair questions people have. This is research ranking, so it has to do with a number of different elements of research. Again, about the same place as Miami. Miami would be one of the worst in the pack, and I think would be the worst in the Big Ten of anybody. I think it looks like here they're below Nebraska. So just a little surprising that they got the nod over some of the people that were above them. Whether you think that was athletics related or not is a question only you can answer. So again, ACC, this is fundraising. They're both above the ACC average, but you see here again, why people want to be in the Big Ten. The Big Ten is just a financial and academic juggernaut. And, people want to be part of that because it brings in money that just dwarfs the sports money. All right. So we get to what everybody's been waiting for.
There it is. Yes, let's do it.
Athletic department. So of course, the thing about the Big Ten is your first question is, are they qualified? Is this an institution that we want to be a part of? And I even before today, it wasn't like they didn't before today. The Big Ten has been trying to get Notre Dame to join for decades, so it's not any shock. But today, this is a stamp that just sort of says yes. So I think now there is no institutional objection of any kind to Notre Dame or Miami in the Big Ten or anywhere else. Maybe not the Ivy League, but the Big Ten, and they're not looking to expand anyway. The Big Ten and anyone else, Notre Dame and Miami are, grade A beef approved. Now we take a look at athletics now. How interested are we as a department? So both really strong athletic departments, like we talked about. Now this is just the last 2 years NACTA points. Although they're about to update this for the spring season, so it'll be soon outdated. But Notre Dame, one of the better ones, had 2,000. Miami only had 1,000. Both pretty good. National championship. So big three national championships. So football, basketball, baseball. Notre Dame has 13. Miami has 9. So pretty good. Overall national championships, neither of them are terribly great. Notre Dame only has 21. Miami only has 5. Olympic medals, both kind of mediocre, 32 and 27. Notre Dame has 24 sports teams. So one of the bigger athletic departments in the voice college football world. 24 teams with 770 athletes. So that's a lot. Get 700 kids in the athletic department. Miami, much smaller. They only have 15 teams and 409. And by the way, that's teams as measured by head coaches. So some schools are like, oh, indoor cross country is different than regular cross country. Swimming is different than diving. So this is using the NCAA metrics. If you're stressed about those numbers. Budget on sports here. The athletic department, Notre Dame has one of the biggest athletic department budgets, $170 million. Miami's 148, also pretty big. Miami spends more on football, and they get less from it. But Miami spends $74 million on football. Notre Dame only spends $60. Basketball, Notre Dame spends a little more, both pretty similar. Olympic sports, again, Notre Dame is a big athletic department, so they're spending $39 million on Olympic sports. That makes them, fourth in our voice of college football world. Miami, much more average, only spending 25, but smaller department. Now, this walk-on value, we calculated because the thing about, there's a huge financial impact to the school of walk-on athletes. And so when we looked at it, Notre Dame benefits about $49 million worth of walk-ons. Again, smaller athletic department, Miami's only about 19. And then this football profitability number. This is a really big number we like to look at here on these deep dives. And this is how much profit do we estimate that football is throwing off to support the rest of your department? And where this gets really interesting is if you think about it, if you were to join the Big Ten, that number would go up a lot. So how much is football throwing off? Well, Notre Dame is third already. $122 million in estimated football profits and football and basketball profits. So the only people doing better are Ohio State and Texas. And they're already equivalent to Michigan. So can Notre Dame afford to not join the Big Ten? Yeah. Notre Dame's doing okay. Miami's only 50 or 53. So they're one of the lowest. And I think Miami would kill to join the Big Ten and turn that 53 into a 93. Just like that. And that's a number that I think is really impactful. And looking at a couple other things, College World Series, both have great baseball teams. So, oh no, I'm looking at the wrong category. Miami has a great baseball team. Miami's got 25 and Notre Dame's got 3. Sorry, guys. I was looking at Florida State there. You're right. Notre Dame only has 3 College World Series. Miami has 25. They've each been to 1 Final Four. Ken Palm, of course, Miami was great this year. They finished number 19, and Notre Dame had kind of a weak basketball year. But overall, historically, both are pretty mid at basketball. When USC played Miami in the NCAA tournament, somebody described it as, the biggest game between 2 blue blood powerhouses that have no idea why those people are going inside or what that orange ball is they're carrying.
Exactly.
So these are both, you guys look at them compared to the rest of the Big Ten. Notre Dame especially, you can't be more of a Big Ten school than Notre Dame. They're already equivalent to Michigan, Ohio State, USC, Penn State, Iowa, Nebraska. They're in that ultra blue blood realm. But Mark, what do you think? I think Miami's there too.
Absolutely, they are. Since you have been educating us on all of this and keeping this up to date for the last year or two with us, certainly I've brought what I know concerning the television aspect of this, and more so the football aspect, to really tout Miami and Florida State myself. Notre Dame is the no-brainer. So they're a given that they are the gold standard and they are the prize to be won by any of these conferences. But anybody who grew up watching Notre Dame play 3 annual rivalries against the Big Ten, and shoot, geography should still matter to some degree, and of course they're right in the heart
I
of
don't know
Big
if you
Ten
noticed,
territory.
my dad was a GA coach in the press box for the 10-10 tie.
Nice. Yes.
Speaking of their Big Ten rivals that they don't play anymore.
Well, Tony, do you think that Notre Dame's stance to stay independent is based on actual tangible numbers, tangible benefits, or is it just this stance that, hey, we want to hang on to part of what makes us unique and separate from everyone else, that we can kind of hang on to, that we're different from everyone else and we can call the shots. We don't have to be subservient to a vote from Indiana and Illinois and Rutgers in a conference.
So you want my Tony opinion? This is
straight.
this is not like founded in data. This is my opinion, having looked at their history. This is very personal opinion here. So first of all, Matt Brown wrote who's just, if you don't subscribe to Matt Brown's Extra Points email newsletter, you absolutely should. He's phenomenal. You should follow him on Twitter. Matt Brown's fantastic. Matt Brown EP, I think, is the Twitter name. So he wrote a column, or a chapter in his book, What If, which is one of my favorite college football books, about what if, when Michigan got kicked out of the Big Ten for cheating in World War I era, what if they hadn't come back? Because what happened with Notre Dame is that Michigan, fielding Yost, was a huge, absolute dirtbag to Notre Dame. And fielding Yost had wanted nothing to do with Notre Dame, sneered at Notre Dame, tried to screw Notre Dame over at every possible opportunity. And fielding Yost decided that Notre Dame was, again, Notre Dame, by the way, Notre Dame was such a bootstrap startup school that when they started Notre Dame, they couldn't afford to build a road to the school. And so they set up a post office in the town. They set up a fake town and set up a post office in their fake town so the federal government would pay to build a road to their school, because their little ramshackle new Catholic school on the lake couldn't afford a road to itself. So again, you were sort of coming up from nowhere. That's why it's in Notre Dame, Indiana. It's not in South Bend, Indiana, because by creating the village of Notre Dame, the federal government paid for the road so they could deliver the mail. So fielding Yost looked down on this school, and so and tried to screw them over at every opportunity. Didn't let them in the Big Ten. Create all this nasty Michigan versus Notre Dame animosity. And so I think that they grew. This whole love of independence is not because they always wanted to be independent, but because they were forced into it. And at some point, they sort of Stockholm syndrome themselves into believing that that's what they wanted the whole time. When the truth is, for most of their history, they would have cut off their left arms to join the Big Ten. And everything makes sense for them to join the Big Ten. But they, over a century of being crapped on by Michigan, they came to believe that they are better off as independents. And you can make a case one way or the other. The truth is, as we know about the Big Ten and the Big Ten Academic Alliance and everything about the Big Ten, they're not better off independent. They're not better off financially. What's really interesting that Matt Brown did in his study on this, to look at what would have happened if Michigan had not rejoined the Big Ten. Matt believes that Ohio State would have pushed to get Notre Dame into the Big Ten, as Ohio State did anyway. Michigan wouldn't have been in the room to block it. And he believes that essentially Notre Dame and Michigan would have flipped roles in history. Because Michigan would have been the random independent out there in the middle of nowhere, alone and independent, and Notre Dame would have joined the Big Ten in 1930. Fascinating book called What If. Really, really cool book. Again, Matt Brown's fantastic. But at one point in history, Michigan and Notre Dame were the best of friends, somebody says. I do not know what point in history this was, because they hate each other. Institutionally, the presidents disliked each other. Michigan felt that Notre Dame was unworthy, and Notre Dame felt that Michigan were arrogant and horrible. And I don't know. Maybe they're both right, but oh, that's my USC showing through. Sorry, just kidding. but they're both, again, they have both grown to be phenomenal, outstanding schools, football blue bloods, just world-class institutions. Like, what are they, an hour apart?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like an hour. You just go take the toll road up to 23 and you're there. It's like an hour apart. Why aren't they playing every year and everything? It's crazy. They should absolutely be. Now, again, one of the other little, and this is a little thing, Notre Dame is a Big Ten member right now. They're a Big Ten affiliate member in hockey. And I think that matters more than people think, because, like, again, they're already, like, flirting at that level. Could you get over the edge? Now, Notre Dame believes very much in the idea of its broad reach. But I mean, the thing, for example, you look at Notre Dame, Rutgers. Notre Dame is the #1 fan base in New York City, the biggest fan base in New York City. So maybe they should be playing at Rutgers every year. Like, I don't know.
Well, your point about the hockey is that not that that's on many people's radar, but they obviously forged a relationship, and they have a working relationship that involves a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts that they're already a part of. Again, San Diego State, by the way, is also already an affiliate member of the Pac-12. Again, so I mean, you think about, like, you hear about those the meetings and the calls. Like, Notre Dame is probably at a lot of those, at least anything that deals with hockey. So just they really fit in with the Big Ten. And if we look at again, sorry, I didn't fix this from Florida State, but get big athletic departments, they fit in with the ACC. Revenue, we talked about, they both fit in. Notre Dame and Miami both fit in with the ACC or the Big Ten. And we talked about the walk-on subsidies. We can skip through this. This is where they are in all sports. Notre Dame, phenomenal. The only schools doing better in the Big Ten right now are Ohio State and Michigan. Miami's a little further back. They're right, kind of equivalent with, like, Penn State, Michigan State, and Iowa. So
2 hours and really 45 minutes, Tony. 2 hours and 45 minutes from South Bend to Ann Arbor.
That is not true.
No?
I've driven that so many times. No, it can't be more than an hour and a half.
That's what I'm seeing here.
Is it? Maybe they're stuck in traffic.
To 90 East.
80, 90. Yeah, it's the same road.
80, 90, 69 in between.
You take, I guess, up to 23.
I've never driven it, so
maybe I don't know. Maybe I was tired. Who knows? I guess I almost went there. Hey, Texas Buckeye, thank you so much for the super sticker.
Yeah, there are a lot of super chats in tow. We will get to those at some point, whether Tony's along for that or not. Many of them are just a hi, hello, but we thank you so much for those, and we will post those and acknowledge those. Thank you.
I think Eric just busted me.
Yes, that's what it is.
Oops. Don't tell my mother, guys. Don't tell my mother. That's too funny, Eric. Sorry, guys. I'm not seeing much of the chat, but so we talked about the cash flow profitability. Again, what did we say? Notre Dame, Miami was 55 and Notre Dame was 120. So, yes. Notre Dame is just football is throwing off cash to support everything they need. Miami is pretty average with the ACC here, as we can see. But again, Miami's doing well, but they could be doing a lot better. This is looking at that profitability. So again, these are the 30 most profitable. So the only schools more profitable than Notre Dame by our estimates are Ohio State and Texas. Again, that's a calculation we do of, like, what would it be? Because there's a lot of this, actually a little more context for you guys, because it's becoming big news right now. There's a lot of debate about, like, what would happen if you pulled football and basketball out of, like, the athletic department into itself. So this cash flow profitability, what it's really doing is calculating that number. So it's calculating an estimate of, like, what would it cost to what would it profitability wise, what would you generate and what would it cost in revenue to just have football and men's basketball. So it uses a lot of estimates. I've worked with some athletic directors and some athletic departments on it. So again, it's not perfect because it's an estimate, but it says Notre Dame is number 3 behind Ohio State and Texas, which is, again, does Notre Dame need the Big Ten money? No. Notre Dame is already blowing away most of the Big Ten. I mean, look at the rest. And these, by the way, these are the 30 best. So they're blowing away everybody that's below here. But even in the 30 best with the Big Ten, you already see Wisconsin, Illinois is at 73. So Notre Dame is already, you take the Big Ten money and add it into everybody else, Notre Dame is already beating most of the Big Ten. So does Notre Dame need the money? No. But, you guys know the t-shirts that say like $20 is $20. Well, $40 million is $40 million. That should be a t-shirt. Like, I'm not Big Ten, but $40 million is $40 million.
Which kind of leads me into this scenario and just this thought process that, we're hearing about the angst coming from the likes of Florida State, Miami, and Clemson, than the rest of the ACC, but certainly the top half of the ACC that believe, okay, if we're already pissed off about the lack of money that we get based on the television revenue, but because it's evenly distributed and we're pulling more of our weight, we need to get more of that money. Well, the same could be said of any conference, as you outlined for us, Tony. Back pre-Larry Scott, there was unequal distribution based on your popularity and your athletic success, and that worked very well. In the Big Ten, as far as I know, it's still an equal distribution. So take Ohio State, and to your point, they're fine. They're doing extremely well. However, can you imagine if they would say, you know what, we're pulling more than our own weight. Why don't we, get even more? Why don't we? Hey, yes, we're doing fine, but we could be doing even better. So Big Ten, why don't you pony up and give us what we deserve?
Yeah. And by the way, somebody's asking, well, how is Indiana so high? Indiana's so high because they're not really spending a lot on football too. So remember that, like, there's two components of profit, right? Revenue and cost. So some of these Big Ten schools are making a lot, like the Pittsburgh Pirates. There's the Pirates model. Like, let's get the huge check from the Big Ten and not spend it all. So yeah, that's why Indiana is so high. Just to be clear, Indiana should probably spend more. But yeah, Mark, no, you're absolutely right on that, but now the issue with Ohio State is, let's be honest here. When we say the Big Ten is worth like $75 million a year, the truth is Indiana's worth like 20, and Ohio State's worth like 350 or whatever the number. I don't know what the number would be. Yeah. So the reality with the Big Ten is that, because the money is so big, it's fine for everyone. It's it's almost like the largesse, the noblesse oblige. Well, sure, here's your money, Indiana and Purdue. But like the truth is that Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State and about to be USC they're carrying all that water. It's just so much water that it's fine for everybody to have a sip.
And that's my point, that I don't know if there's any level of angst there every so often that it hits them. Sure, we're doing great. We're doing fine, but we could really go to the Big Ten.
Wouldn't another 50 be nice?
Yeah. And usually these revenue sharing models are a little bit of both. They take from both the equal distribution that we are shared conference members, therefore we give and take, and we both have equal membership, but at the same time there is another portion of this in which you're going to earn what you take from the conference and what you earn financially. So a little bit of both. It's a bit of a luxury tax model.
And quite honestly, as more of these, because the other piece is with the huge new element of the new playoff. Yep. The new playoff is going to dump another $10 or $15 million per school just onto the payoffs. That's the estimates. Again, by the way, guys, I'm not a TV valuation person. I'm deferring to the TV valuation people. The TV valuation people have told us to expect about $10 to $15 million.
Yep.
It might even be more, depending on what happens, but about 10 to 15 million per school added on to what we already get today. So if you think about that, like the Big Ten is already dishing out all this money. It might not be unthinkable for Ohio State and Michigan and USC and Penn State to be like, guys, we think if you make the new playoff, you should get an extra 15 million. And who knows what the structure you use with that is, and blah, blah, blah. And Indiana might go, well, we think if you make the basketball tournament, you should get a little more money. But the truth is that like the basketball money is so much less than the football money that they'll be like, okay, you need us to validate your parking as well? We'll pick up your Fogo de Chao downstairs. There's a Fogo de Chao under the Big Ten. Anyway, that's my thought on that. This was looking at recruiting expense. Notre Dame is pretty hefty recruiting expense. Miami is also on there. So these are the top 15 recruiting spenders for men's sports. Again, Notre Dame and Miami, both up there, both very Big Ten. I mean, these are two great elite blue blood football programs that would fit in the Big Ten. So should we look at football, everybody's favorite?
Tony, before we get to the football, talking about speculation of numbers and where these conferences could land, I gained a certain level of criticism. I posted a video several months ago and I had the Big Ten landing at 21. And again, it was not a prediction. It was just, okay, here's one scenario, and the Big Ten landing in 21. People were all up in arms that there couldn't be a conference with 21, even though we know that once Penn State joined the Big Ten, that it existed for over 20 years with 11 teams. So
remember, it was called the Big Ten for about a decade with 9 teams too.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a nice, neat number. But do you think that there's any strategy or there's any way to trying to land on a particular number that it means anything?
So there's an element at which numbers are really good for scheduling.
Sure.
The question is like, is it good for scheduling? First of all, the first question is this and this is a first question to ask is this an institution that we feel is worthy of being in the Big Ten?
Sure.
And that cannot be understated. Because I'm telling you right now, like, if they don't think it's a Big Ten worthy institution, overall, those presidents are not going to let them in. Because remember that with the Big Ten, you merge in your libraries, you merge in your like PhD mentoring, you merge in your faculty leadership development, you merge in your purchasing, you merge in your IT development. So if they don't think this is a worthy institution, they're not going to merge themselves into it. And it's not like the Big 12 where you like pick and play, like it's like Legos, like, oh, let's break it apart and put new pieces in every 3 years. Like this is they view it as you go into Big Ten, you go in for life. Chicago quit sports, but didn't fully quit the Big Ten. Today, you look at when you see like academic stuff like apply to the Big Ten, C is for Chicago. They're still there, even though they're now Division III having like resurrected football in the 50s or whatever. So it's just, again, they are like, the Big Ten is different than everybody else. Pac-12 is close. Ivy League is their own little world. Nobody else is as integrated as the Big Ten. So the first question is this institution worthy? Notre Dame, we've always known that answer. Always. The last 50 years, we've known that answer is yes. Miami, we found out today that answer is absolutely yes. Now, I mean, we talked on this show. We've been on the Miami channel. Was that answer yes a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Yeah, probably. Right? Like, I mean, it wasn't like the stuff that got them into the AAU. It's not like the numbers changed today. But essentially what you saw the Big Ten presidents voted, and the Ivy League presidents and the Pac-12 presidents, but the Big Ten presidents and the Ivy League presidents today, or whenever the vote was last week, whatever, voted and said, Miami, you are one of us.
So how about the inverse, Tony? Stanford and more so Cal having the academic stature that's overwhelming, but the athletics and especially the football recently, and for Cal, the football for a long, long time not being what would be preferable?
Well, there's two pieces there that I think we have to break apart. So we said first step is institution. Are you worthy? Second step, I would say, is athletics. Do we want you? And the third step is, will the networks pay for you? Or do we want to just suck it up? And like, do we want you so much that we will suck it up and pay for you ourselves? Now, the Big Ten presidents have said, and a lot of them have turned over, but the Big Ten presidents have said very clearly, and we've been told very clearly, despite like what the Big 12 people hope, we've been told very clearly that the Big Ten is not interested at this point in a dilutive ad. So Indiana does not want to take less money to add Stanford or Washington, according to the Big Ten presidents. Iowa has been very outspoken on this. And so as a result, the question is the first. So the first question is, is this institution worthy? Stanford, Cal, absolutely, right? Like Cal's on the board of the AAU. Like you can't. There is no institution in the world more worthy than Cal of anything at all, despite how much I hate the Bears. Sorry, Gumby. I mean, I cheer for you to lose, but I love you guys. Would hire any of your grads in a minute. But again, the question is are the TV people willing to pay for it? The answer has been no. Now, there's another kink with Cal, and I don't have an answer to this. But UCLA is the University of California. Like a lot of elements of the University of California are the University of California. So there are a lot of people who have told me, guess what, guys? The University of California is now a member of the Big Ten. So, one of the things I don't have an answer is, for example, the library at UC Santa Barbara. Is that part of the big collection now? Or will it be? I don't know. Some people say yes. Some people don't know. The purchasing discount benefits that come from the Big Ten, will that apply to UC San Diego? I don't know. But so the Big Ten may have bought Cal for free. They got UCLA, and they may have gotten the best part of Cal and not have to deal with the football team. But that said, Cal's also in a phenomenal market, right? So if the market is a question, but right now the big issue is, do these schools bring in the dollar value that makes it worth it to the Big Ten to add them, or even close? We've been told with Oregon, the answer is absolutely not. With Oregon and Washington. Washington, by the way, is as Big Ten a school as you can get in this country. There is no school in this country that is more Big Ten that's not in the Big Ten than the University of Washington. But apparently the network people said no. Oregon, a little more dubious academically. Again, they're a member of the AAU. They're a great school. But they're probably the bottomest of the AAU schools. They only do 140 million in research. Nebraska got kicked out of the AAU and they do like 500. So Oregon's a whole nother situation. Cal and Stanford, again, you can't get more amazing institutions. But supposedly, again, this is based on reports. I'm not in the room on these things. The TV network said it wasn't accretive. It wasn't worth the money. Don't hate me. By the way, I said, and you guys remember, I said if I was a Big Ten president, I would add Stanford and Cal, and I would swallow the money. Whatever the difference is, and again, and I think in another world, like 10 years ago world, if you said to the Big Ten presidents, would you like to have Stanford and Cal merged into you? They would have been like, where do I write a check? We're in a little different world right now. And also, by the way, it's not hypothetical money. It's real money. And again, Danny Kahneman won a Nobel Prize about the difference between hypothetical money and real money. So, the idea of losing real money might have a very strong angst to Iowa and Illinois and Nebraska and Purdue and Indiana and everybody about the idea of do you want to lose more money? And by the way, add more schools that can beat you, and pay more money to travel to them, and you lose out. So I don't know. Larry asked partial shares. Here's the thing. Are you creating a JV squad, or are they going to go up to big shares? Because you're talking, I mean, the TV contracts, like normally what you do is you add somebody like when Utah joined the Pac-12, and it moves up every year until it hits full share. Well, that's great because as Utah's grown and everything like that, Utah is totally worth it. But the question is if Cal is worth a third of the Big Ten average, they're not going to be worth the Big Ten average in 5 or 6 years. They might grow a little bit, but not much. I mean, those are pretty mature markets. The thing about Utah too, let's use Utah as an example. Utah was like a massively successful Mountain West school doing great things. And everyone knew that when Utah made that next step, Utah was going to grow, and Utah was going to grow into its shoes, and they have done that. Right? But like, is Cal going to grow into the Big Ten shoes? The University of California. They've been playing in the Rose Bowl since like 1900, and they stink. So are they going to be better? I don't know. Are they going to grow into it? What do you think? I mean, am I crazy?
Yeah, that is the big question about those two schools in particular. Will they, you make the comment all the time, Tony, they don't like to lose at anything. So would that challenge of, okay, this is serious football time, you don't want to be embarrassed, do you?
Yeah, exactly. Do they want, because that's a problem, by the way. And this, by the way, guys, was a problem with the Ivy League in the 1950s. Is they were looking at the world and they were like, we want to be number one in everything we do. And they were like, we're not going to be able to keep doing this in football. And so they pulled back the throttle and let the football world pass them by. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't that people who don't understand the Ivy League act like, oh, they couldn't keep up. They didn't make the decisions. Like, no, they pulled the throttle back and they got in the right-hand lane and they let everybody pass them. It was not accidental. There's actually articles about that. If you don't believe me, I can find them for you. But it's just an interesting situation, and you kind of wonder, like, what will they do? Yeah, and as Doug says, they already lose. So, yeah. And by the way, the thing about Cal is we can't bag too much on Cal, because poor Cal is trying to do it right. I mean, poor Cal has pumped the money in. Cal pumped more money in their stadium than anybody in this country, I think, because they built a stupid thing on a fault line and it moves in pieces with earthquakes. But they've pumped the money in. They got the coach. When Oregon tried to lure their coach over, they coughed up more money to keep him. They've like lightened up on their transfer requirements. Like, they're doing everything you're supposed to. They're just not winning. And that is, I think, irking them. Look at what they've done with basketball. They've got the new coach. So Cal is trying to follow the formula. It's almost just like, somebody who's like trying and doing everything right. It's just not working. So I think that's their problem right now.
Yeah.
And I hope it works, because I love to hate them and I love to like have them as a big rival. So I hope they get it together. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, it would be fun to see Cal field a competitive football team. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. Those like Aaron Rodgers games, like all fired up, 4th and 9. Like, yeah, I remember those. So let's look at football pedigree here for the Big Ten. So this is an interesting thing here, guys. So this is looking at elite football pedigree of, have you ever won a consensus national champion? Have you ever had Heisman Trophy winner? Ever? And then let's update a little modern. Have you had a modern college football playoff or BCS appearance? And look who's right in the top of the middle. Look who's done all of those things. Obviously, our elite blue bloods, Notre Dame and Miami. So, I mean, just again, I don't think we have to justify our Notre Dame and Miami worthy of the Big Ten football. Yes. We'll move on. Okay, sorry. So check this out, guys. This is our football categories, and look who is. There are about 4 totally green categories here, just about, and they are Ohio State, Alabama, USC, and Notre Dame. Miami is also very successful. Of course, a lot of these stats go back throughout history, and of course, Miami was nothing before the 80s. So, we'll take it kind of with a grain of salt there. They don't have some of the history pedigree, but just phenomenal. So Kyle Umlang, he's an awesome Texas guy. He does this blue blood ranking. Notre Dame is number 3. Miami's number 13. Hard to get better than that. Winsipedia, the website, does a multi-factor ranking. Notre Dame is number 5. Miami's 18. As far as national championships go, Notre Dame has 13. Miami has 5 golden rings. Heisman's, again, Notre Dame 7, Miami 2. These are blue blood numbers. AP weeks at number 1. Notre Dame is what, 4th? Yeah, Notre Dame's 4th. Miami's way up there too, like 6th or something. AP weeks ranked, again, Notre Dame's out of this world. Your TV viewership. This is where this was a 5-year average. Notre Dame just blows people out of water. People watch Notre Dame. That's why they have their own NBC contract. In our fan base size estimate that we did that combined a bunch of different fan base studies, Notre Dame is what, 2nd on this list? Yeah, 2nd behind Ohio State. Hard to beat that. All-time win percent, both great, but Notre Dame is at 73, which is just wild. Notre Dame is 107 consensus All-Americans. That's number 1. It's crazy. 525 NFL draft picks, which ticks me off because USC is 524. Football budgets, again, Miami's real high. Notre Dame's also decently high. And that profit that we talked about at 122. So it's hard to okay. Are you a Game of Thrones fan, Mark?
I'm not, but I'm familiar with some of the storylines.
Larry gets best quote. It's Colorado the Samuel Tarly of Game of Thrones. Possibly.
I know the spotlight is, of course, on Miami and Notre Dame because of the news of the day, but I got to say, Tony, our Ohio State contingent is going to be mighty proud and beating on their chest when you do your car wash and come on through, because that Ohio State column is especially dark green.
It's ridiculous. My grandpa's a devout Buckeye, or was. He passed away. And so he is smiling from above at that all green column. And Alabama too, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
Again, and by the way, guys, this is the most elite of elite. So I know our poor friends from Virginia Tech and West Virginia are like pulling their hair out at this. If we put everybody up there, this would just be one giant block of green.
Yes.
So again, Virginia Tech and West Virginia. West Virginia is I think they're the winningest program to have not won a national championship.
Yeah, they're fringe top 15 in all-time wins and winning percentage. Yeah. Yeah.
So West Virginia, everybody, again, these are all awesome schools, and these are all awesome athletic departments. So we're just talking differentiations in awesomeness. So this is something that I think is huge, guys. And this is the consolidation we've seen of national championships. So this is 1950 to present national champions. This is wild. And if you moved Miami and Notre Dame from the gray column to the blue column, it would be even more wild. So right now, when people talk about, who's going to be the number, there's no question who's the number 3 conference right now, as it's constituted, as it's constituted. The ACC is the number 3 conference in football. There's no debate, no question. Now, they were a bad conference last year.
Sure.
Oh my God, there was some awful, I thought you'd have to play the chicken dance to some of those games I watched in the ACC. But as far as overall goes,
sure,
the ACC is locked in. Again, all conferences have bad years.
I completely agree. You're going to catch some hell for that. You just pissed some people off.
The chicken dance?
No, just with the ACC statement of making it an emphatic number 3.
It is. The numbers are clear. Because you got Clemson, Florida State, Notre Dame, and Miami. And then you add in, I mean, also great programs, that are up and down with Syracuse, North Carolina,
Pitt.
who am I forgetting? NC State's decent. Louisville's been really good. Louisville won a Heisman Trophy. Pitt's won national championships. So I think Pitt probably has 2 national championships in this chart. 2 of those 19. Or maybe even 3, I forget. So I mean, again, great. These are great things, but we've had a consolidation, and as long as Miami, Notre Dame, Florida State, and Clemson are in the ACC, again, nobody else has 4 like that, and you see that here. Pac-12 has 2 actually, and you can argue they're both halves, right? Because you've got Washington and Colorado actually. So if we go here, this is looking at national championships. This is just 85 to present, because the early 80s there was like some debated ones and it wasn't as clear. So by about 1985, like things really settled into more consensus. There's fewer, like SMU, for example. Some people think they have 2 in the early 80s, some people don't. So this is just 85. From 85 on, there's no good debates. And when you take a look at that, again, 50% in the SEC, 20% in the Big Ten. This chart, Notre Dame was on its own. Add Notre Dame to the ACC, you're looking at 27. Ooh, add Notre Dame to the ACC, they're beating the Big Ten. It's because the Big Ten loses to USC in the Rose Bowl. Yeah, how many would the Big Ten have if USC hadn't beaten them in the Rose Bowl?
Oh, man. Yes, we could count those up. Yes. There's just, it makes me sick.
And as Tim points out here, I just want to highlight this. Tim says, Fox says some say they don't dictate who the member universities are. You're right. Fox says, here's what we will pay for that school. Mm-hmm. And the Big Ten presidents decide whether or not they're interested. I mean, I'll tell you in all honesty, I don't want to pick on somebody. Let's say Taliban State University from Kabul. It's not a real school. Taliban State wanted to join the Big Ten, and Fox said, that's worth $1 zillion. The Big Ten would say no. They're not in Taliban State. And that's a ridiculous example because I don't want to pick on somebody and be like that's not worthy of the Big Ten. So you can insert whoever you think belongs there, or whoever our American version of Taliban State is.
Well,
they would just
your graphic here backs up.
But again, you look at
what I've stated. I was just saying, Tony, your graphic here backs up what I've said a number of times here in recent weeks that has pissed a lot of people off from the Big 12. And that's, I love the conference. I love the competitive nature of the football from top to bottom. I believe that it will be the most competitive within the conference. But if you're talking about competing on the national level, this is why I've stated that I will take a wager from anyone that the Big 12 will not win a national championship in the next 10 years and beyond. We're looking at it right now. They just don't have that type of program.
Now, of course, the thing that happens the thing I will say though is as we look at a playoff world, things happen as we look to a playoff world, things happen. And there may be a time when, I don't know, I'm making up things, right? Like Ohio State is unbeatable, right? With their crazy high-flying offense, and a blizzard comes through Columbus, and a really boring, I don't know, Kansas team that somehow made a playoff beats them in a blizzard. And in a single elimination playoff world, we may have stuff like that will happen. But in general, I think you're right. And under our current model, it's hard to imagine.
But see, Tony, I see it the other way. I think this expansion, while it is affording more opportunities for a conference like the Big 12, it's making it accessible more so, but it's going to be more difficult for them to advance through the playoff because they're going to have to win 3 or 4 games.
Well, look at what TCU did. TCU, they ran out of pixie dust, right? They ran out of like Cinderella's magic pixie dust at midnight.
They would have had to do what they did against Michigan 3 or 4 times. Not once.
They did, though. They did it against Baylor. They did it against K-State one time. They did. So, I mean, it's possible, but I think I agree with you completely. But there may be like one time. It's like the odds in a casino, right? Like roulette. Like, what are the odds that it's like 20 3 times in a row? Real small. but at some point it is. But I agree with you. I don't think that they're in a position to do that. But your question is, could one team maybe once, maybe, but yeah, they're not going to do it time and time again. Because you see the same thing with the basketball tournament. Like this year, we had a situation with the basketball tournament where teams got way further than anyone would have thought.
Mm-hmm.
It did catch up to them in the end because Connecticut was a juggernaut. But
I think you would have to take, Tony,
ahead,
I think you would have to take your chart all the way back into the 1930s for the Big 12 to show up without Oklahoma and Texas.
Yeah,
I think we have to go back to TCU like in the 1930s.
Or Oklahoma A&M.
Yes.
Oh, they won in basketball. They didn't win in football. They won in basketball, not in football. Yeah, exactly. I don't think they'll be as competitive. I also think, and I get vilified for this on Twitter all the time because I've said this, but I think that they face a relevancy crisis, and I think they know it because at the end of the day, you're going to have UCF at Iowa State on ESPN Plus, and so they want to try to get some relevancy first. And it's a valid point.
I will correct myself. BYU 1984, but again, we're looking at a poll era. We're looking at a team that didn't face a team ranked the entire season and played a 6-5 Michigan team, the worst Bo Schembechler team ever.
So, and that's not a rip on them.
No, it's not.
Because they won. They won. It's awesome that they won.
Yes.
Could they have beaten Washington and USC, Ohio, whoever else were the powers that year in a row? Odds are probably not good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think we're going to see more consolidation.
And that shows us the crazy nature of this sport through the years when a team wins a national championship on a late December night in San Diego at the Holiday Bowl, playing a team coached by Bo Schembechler, and it was his worst team in 21 years.
Yeah.
That's who they were facing to win a national championship. It's just crazy.
Well, and the other thing, by the way, look, these are the logos of all the teams that have won since 85. Like, we're not just looking at that bottom number. These are all of them. And there's not a lot of logos on there.
Exactly. Yep.
So that's Taliban State versus Croatia A&M in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I would watch that. I would watch Croatia A&M. This was taking a look. Sorry, I forgot to change the headline there. But we pulled this together in a rapid today with Miami and Notre Dame because there were so many changes today. This is weeks ranked in the AP poll. Notre Dame. I mean, there's no doubting Notre Dame and Miami's credibility here. So that's Miami, Notre Dame. I mean, it's a huge day for these institutions. Everybody who is a leader of one of these schools, everybody who's a faculty member, a student, an alumnus, staff, families, or just fans. This is a day to be proud of these 6 schools. Like, this is a big deal. So congratulations to all of them, and especially to all my friends at Miami and my friends at Notre Dame, my friends at Arizona State and South Florida and everywhere else. You guys have earned it. It's a great, great day. And bravo to you.
Tony, I want to thank you as well, because we had planned to do a deep dive on Oregon because of some of the speculation that was talked about a few weeks ago. We thought we would line up Oregon, but this obviously, I texted Tony and said, can you change on the fly and go Miami, Notre Dame, please?
Well, hey, the Oregon slides are ready, so we can do them whenever.
So we will do another deep dive here soon, but of course, with the big news of the day. And again, I think Tony completely gets it, and the rest of us can only somewhat get the weight of this situation and the truly historic day that it is on the academic level, that this only happens roughly 1 or 2 times a decade and usually doesn't involve this number of schools. And now we have 2 that are football powers that could be lining up to join the Big Ten Conference.
It is. Congratulations, Hurricanes, Irish, Sun Devils, Highlanders, Bulls, and Revolutionaries. They changed their mascot this week.
This week?
Yeah, this week. They switched from the colonials was viewed as like not a good thing, you know, because colonialism. So
Yeah.
they were like, "Oh, George Washington, revolutionary." That's what.
Okay. Yeah.
Actually, it's a better nickname anyway. So yeah, they're the revolutionaries now.
I did not know that. I didn't come across that. Very good. We did have a couple quick questions here. Antoine, tremendous in following us around all the various channels and shows. Wanted just a little bit more specificity involving the term research and what is exactly being researched.
So it can be anything. It's usually very science related. I mean, but sometimes it can be social science related. It can be economics. It can be business. It can be anything really. But usually the big money is in the science stuff.
And I apologize, Anthony. This was hundreds of comments ago that you had commented whatever you did and asked me to go back and try to find it, but that's buried a long time ago. So we will catch up with the other comments, and we want to respect Tony's time. So anything else, Tony? Anything else you wanted to hit on?
No, just it's going to be wild to see. And I mean, again, the stuff, by the way, when we talk about like the Big Ten expansion, it's probably not going to be tomorrow, right? It's probably not going to be this year. It's probably not going to be next year. But what this really does, as far as like the future of the healthcare research, all kinds of stuff. Healthcare is the big one, right? Med schools are huge. Arizona State, again, today, Arizona State announced they're opening a new med school. And the fact that Arizona State does as much federal research as they do without a med school is wild. It's awesome. But I mean, all of that would be meteorology, ocean science. I mean, UC San Diego is like huge in oceanographic everything. Neurological, that's medical, so all that stuff. Any kind of research. Again, it's more about the dollars and the sourcing and what they're doing, because I mean, everybody is going to have different specialties of different things. But essentially, with the Big Ten today, there is no question now that Miami and Notre Dame are as worthy as you can possibly be for Big Ten membership, or for your kids to go to school there.
One other item here that comes to mind, folks, I produced a video about a month ago looking at Notre Dame's recent history against the Big Ten, and there is no other school that has faced an outside conference more than Notre Dame has versus the Big Ten. And I was just looking at the 21st century 81 matchups between Notre Dame and the Big Ten since the year 2000. And ironically, while Notre Dame has a slight winning record of 44-37, they've been outscored in those games by the Big Ten. So they've suffered more than their share of blowout losses. And
does USC count?
Check out that video. And we projected forward as well. What would Notre Dame look like in the Big Ten now? You could liken them to a Penn State, something in that range based on what they're looking like right now.
Did you include SC?
And so forth. I did not include US. Oh, yes, I did. I did include USC. Okay. Yes, this is the new Big Ten. Yes, absolutely.
I know. It's cool. And by the way, I don't know if you know this, Mark. The Big Ten has already started making the shift. So, for example, where they publish like the list of the provosts, it's all 16. So the Big Ten has started making the change. It's exciting.
Very cool. And likewise, I will produce a video that will look at Miami against the Big Ten, not as much volume there to look at, but certainly when Miami has come up against the Big Ten, they certainly don't like facing Wisconsin. They have faced the Badgers in 3 bowl games in the last 10 or 11 years. They are 0-3 against the Badgers. I don't know that they want to see that November game up in Madison at Camp Randall on their schedule anytime soon.
I like it. And fight on, Texas Buckeye, by the way.
Yes. Appreciate you all. Tony, thank you so much. If there's anything that you want people to know,
feel free to reach out. If you have questions or you want to see stuff, I put a lot of stuff up on Twitter, put up a lot of kind of interesting stuff the last few days on finances that some of you guys may get a kick out of taking a look at. So it's TJ Altimore, like Baltimore with no B, right there on the screen. You can check it out.
Awesome. Tony, thank you so much. I'm going to hang on here for just a minute, just to answer some questions to make sure we didn't miss any super chats. But otherwise, we appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football. Tony, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. We'll see you soon.
Sounds good. Have a great night. Tony Altamore setting us up once again, as he typically does. Love these deep dives. We have now taken a deep dive on Michigan, deep dive on USC, Florida State, and now add Miami and Notre Dame to the list. We are going to cover all the major schools that you see behind me with the deep dives throughout all the Voice of College Football channels. So we're going to take the deep dive on everyone ultimately as we go through the rest of this summer. Please, folks, use the Amazon link. It ultimately helps you. So think of it this way. If you enjoy the content and the conversation here at the Voice of College Football and want us to keep going, I would like to keep going. I enjoy talking college football with all of you. I enjoy producing videos like I did just the other day, where we looked at the national championship seasons of 2018 through 2022. We're going to go through every season in the history of college football. We're going to review the championship race and see if there are any inconsistencies. We are challenging the national championships. So check out the video. Again, as I've stated, during the college football playoff era, I am not disputing a national championship during this era of the playoff. However, I will dispute and look at resumes of teams that were left out of the playoff that earned it just as much as some of the teams that were selected in this invitational era. But once we get back to 2013 and the BCS era, there will be much to unpack and challenge in regards to these national championships. So we are going to rightly divide these national championships, and we're going to redistribute national championships based on how they were earned on the field. So that's going to be a fun time as we delve through college football history. Join us on Patreon. We did a watch party last week with Clemson, Ohio State 2019, all the controversial plays and calls in that game. We're going to do another 3 coming up with Nebraska, Michigan, 1997, a great debate on Nebraska, Michigan of 97, the last split national championship, at least between those two polls. Some would argue 2003 with LSU and USC, but we're going to look at the 1997 Nebraska, Michigan. We're going to have a great debate on that. Who would have won the game? Who was the better team? Also, the 2016 Ohio State, Michigan game and the spot. JT Barrett gets the nod, and Ohio State takes it in for a touchdown in overtime, of course, to defeat Michigan and go on in 2016 to the college football playoff. And of course, we've got another debate lined up with Ohio State and Miami at the Fiesta Bowl and the pass interference call. Anything you would like us to debate. Some of those debates are going to involve having to go through the videotape and watch the game, as we did last week with Clemson and Ohio State. We had a great time. Talk to anyone who sat down with us as we looked through the Clemson Ohio State playoff game. Good time there. All right. Yeah, make your requests. And man, I just looked at, I was going back to look at a few things this afternoon and noticed at this point last season, I ranked the top 25 quarterbacks in college football, and like 18,000 people watched that video. So maybe I need to do that again for 2023, rank the top 25 quarterbacks in college football. We do have our Big Ten, ACC, Big 12, Pac-12, SEC power rankings out. We did rank all the quarterbacks in the Big Ten. We've got our 1 through 133 rankings, and then the call-in feedback show that ensued after that. So check out our 1 through 133 rankings. So we will continue to rate and rank and set you up for the college football season. We will probably start to do schedule previews. There is actually, even though there are practically 3 months to the college football season, way too much stuffed into this brain that I need to get out there and attack to get us all set for the 2023 season. But we will do our best right here at the Voice of College Football. Next live show appears to be Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, the Big Ten live show. The Big Ten live show is coming up Monday at 6. Most likely we'll be able to fulfill that obligation. We will see. We'll keep you posted. And here at the Voice of College Football, I am going to take a little time off here and there over the next few weeks. All right. Appreciate you being here. Everybody have a great night. Thanks for being here. And we've got less than 100 days to college football, and we're going to do our best to get you ready for it.
We will see you next time. Oh, whoa. Yes. We had a number of super chats. I'm so sorry. We want to acknowledge these. I always want to recognize the super chats. And you know what, folks, is going to make it so much easier for me now going forward is YouTube has changed its configuration. And now I can just click on a tab. And once I get my studio set up and my camera reconfigured and I'm back to where I was a year ago, we've been kind of set back over the last year and I'm still working off this laptop, but I would be able to show you what I see on my screen. YouTube has now made it easy to find the super chats. It used to just be this endless list of chat messages, and then the super chats would light up, but I would miss some of them at times. But now I can click on a button and it will line up all the super chats in a row. So, Falconer TRX, thank you so much for the super sticker. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for that. Falconer TRX coming back with big. Look at the big 1G, B1G day for Miami getting accepted to the AAU. Falconer TRX, thank you. Michigan is now Harvard South. Oh, I'm sorry. Miami. Miami is Harvard South with hot women. That's the reputation. I'm not going to, I have not been quite that south in Florida before. I believe the most southern I've ever been in Florida, and this was quite a few times, Fort Lauderdale. I am going to be close to Daytona at some point this summer. Falconer TRX, it's great to hate Notre Dame football. Jason, thank you so much for that. Michigan only school in all green. That was academically. Ohio State was the only one in all green in football. All right. Sergeant Pickles. I have no problem riding Miami and Notre Dame's coattails into the Big Ten as long as we are in, even if that means bringing the Duckies too. Go Dogs. Yes, we heard it rumored. Well, it wasn't rumored. It was confirmed. So the confirmation, the news was that Washington and Oregon were vetted and cleared for membership into the Big Ten. That doesn't mean that they were given membership or they earned membership. That just means that they were cleared, vetted and cleared, kind of a background check on Washington and Oregon. A lot of people took off on that as saying that was an automatic entry into the Big Ten. We took a more measured approach here. We will wait and see, but that is certainly a step in the right direction for Washington. Falconer TRX, health had to be a huge factor. Texas Buckeye 1953. Thank you so much for the super sticker. Much appreciated. Much appreciated, Jason. Fielding Yost used to slap Chuck Norris in the face. Well, Fielding Yost was one tough dude. Falconer TRX, if Miami and Notre Dame go to the Big Ten, how does NIL factor in? If Miami and Notre Dame go to the Big Ten, how does NIL factor in? Well, without giving it too much thought, I think that these schools operate individually on NIL as it currently stands. They're not leaving the state. The state laws have much to do with how that's governed, but they're staying in the same state. Changing conferences. Falconer TRX, with new playoff, will there be football brackets? Yeah, there will be a little mini bracket. There'll be buys at the beginning of the bracket. It's not a real clean, like 8, 16, 32 are the best brackets, of course, because those are the bracket numbers that are even distribution, but you got the buys. And yes, I'm sure that they won't be quite the popular item because they're not going to be nearly as fun as the NCAA basketball tournament. But yes, brackets are there. Will it be called January Insanity? January Insanity, unless somebody else can come up with something that rolls off the tongue a little bit better than that. Falconer TRX, you would be the guy to do that. So keep thinking. John Telly, is Miami a blue blood? In my opinion, more of a demigod. They are not a blue blood. Demigod, I'll leave that up to Miami fans, and I'll leave that up actually to Miami detractors. Stanford and Cal should have to spend a certain amount of money on football, meaning I'm guessing to join the Big Ten.
And John Telly as well. BYU has won national championship in the 1980s. Yes, 1984, 13-0, beat Michigan in the Holiday Bowl 24-17 with Robbie Bosco at quarterback. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here at the Voice of College Football. Again, keep it locked in here. We come your way every day at some point. Tons of content coming your way. I am going to take a little R&R here over the next couple weeks at times, but we will keep it flowing, keep it rolling right here at the Voice of College Football. You guys have a great night, and we will see you soon. There they are. Big step toward entry into the Big Ten for the Canes and for the Irish.